So, my name is Teemu Tapanila, and welcome to Azure and Friends Meetup, 1st of June. Azure Friends is all about basically people who are doing Azure and wants to make friends. We are arranging different kind of events. The whole idea is about sharing the knowledge, sharing the passion, getting people to know each other, telling what kind of stuff people are doing on Azure. We are aiming from beginners to very advanced, so we are not making so that the topic would be only about beginners or only about advanced. We are trying to cover as much as different topics as possible. We are totally independent. We are seeking to benefit everyone. We are trying to arrange these events all around. Currently, we have been mostly in Helsinki. We might be going to other places in the near future. The whole idea is basically coming together and getting inspired. We are trying to basically keep them a little bit different. So we are trying to cover all different kind of topics. So if you think that any topic would it fit, yes, most probably it would fit Azure and Friends. So we are not stuck into something that it should be IT pro, this should be developer, this should be admin, this should be network or anything like that. We are very open to all kind of sessions. We don't have any kind of mandatory requirements for speakers. We are very openly welcoming basically everybody to speak. So if you ever are wondering that you would like to speak in an event, please approach us and let's get you into stage. Today we want to thank our host Reaktor for the space and for drinks. Now if you want to say a few words about Fusion.
Sure thing. Good to meet you guys. My name is Jussi Siltanen. Nowadays I work with Fusion ecosystem. I've been working with Reaktor for almost 20 years actually. I was one of the first ones to join in after the guys who started the company. They were actually my friends then, but I was still studying and then I don't know, it was a surprise to me back then that the company wasn't bankrupt after, let's say, 2 years, and then I started scratching the door. Would there be something for me as well? So I've been doing little this and that, basically business-related roles and leadership roles during the years. And about 1.5 years ago, I joined development team of Fusion ecosystem, basically meaning the set of companies that Reaktor as a group owns totally or minority of, and one of them being Mallow. And then the whole idea of this ecosystem has been that okay, Reaktor is going to be very good at what they do, but they don't do everything. This is a good example. There is no point of Reaktor specializing in deep Azure consulting, so that's the whole point of this stuff. So basically we want to kind of create a set of companies that work together, and then hopefully we can help the customers very holistically when it comes to different kind of IT related stuff and digital development. I think that's to put in short, and if you have anything to ask, I'm gonna be around here for the whole evening, so just come and say hello and let's have a chat. Thanks.
Thank you. So today a little bit change in our agenda. So first of all, we were supposed to have a JS studio today. Sadly, Antti is sick, so I will be talking about Azure infrastructure as a code. Then we will have food between the sessions so that you're well fed before Antti Arnell is going to talk about basically IT pro to DevOps. And then we will have a Roope Seppälä talking about Microsoft for startups, hopefully at 7 p.m. And after that, we have food and drinks for everybody. We will have the feedback form later on also available. The whole idea is please send us a feedback. We are trying to always improve our events by gathering feedback and then basically acting based on the feedback. So if you ever want to be Azure Friends, if you have an exciting job, if you have any kind of cool projects that you want to talk about, we're constantly looking for speakers in events. Easiest way to contact us is through our website, Twitter, LinkedIn, or a Slack channel. So in an MS Group Slack, that's the most active one. That's where we are constantly planning all of our events. So if you want to see how events are held, what we are talking, just join our Slack. We're always looking for new people to help us organize events. That's basically everything about that. Then, Azure Infrastructure as a Code. So again, my name is Teemu Tapanila. I work as a Chief Technology Officer and Principal Architect at Mallow. I've been Microsoft Azure MVP now for 9 years. Hopefully next month will be my 10th, and I will be happy about that. Let's see, it will be interesting to see. You need to yearly renew it. Today, we are going to talk about infrastructure as a code, why you should be doing it. Then we are going to talk about tooling, then development, and bicep new features. Infrastructure as a code is a very, I would say, interesting topic. How many here are doing infrastructure as a code? In every project. Oh, yeah, a few hands. It's very interesting that everybody's, yeah, we are doing it, and then we ask, like, so in every project, I'm like, no, we are not. So we have this project that we are doing infrastructure as code, and this project where we are not. The whole idea is like a little bit about why are we doing it and why not we aren't doing it. So the whole idea is to manage your infrastructure in a way where you can version it, so that you can easily evolve it and then use it within the same tools as you're using with coding. So the same pipelines that are deploying your code should be also deploying your infrastructure. This part, pretty simple, right? It's very clear. Then the whole idea about that is that IAC should always generate the same infrastructure every time that you apply it. This is already where it's a little bit hard sometimes. So what is the problem? Why are we using IAC? How many here are spending a lot of time in infrastructure as code? Like, let's just say more than 40% of your job. More than 20? It's interesting that people are saying that they're using infrastructure code in every project and that they're saying we're not really doing it. So it's interesting who's then really doing it. But the whole idea of why starts from the basically drifting. It's very easy that if you have one environment, it's very easy to keep it up to date. You manually do the changes, they are there, they're working. But once you start to have more environments, let's just say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 environments, if you're telling me that you can manually keep them up to date and you remember to do exactly the same changes in every environment, I personally don't believe you. Because the more environments you have, the more steps you have, the more mistakes you're going to make. You just forgot to click the one button, fill the one value there. And the whole idea is that after a time, environments become different. People call them snowflakes. So then they're a little bit different. Like in production, remember to do this. In that environment, remember to do that. And they are starting to drift apart more and more. And it gets harder and harder to bring them together. In a recent customer case, I've been now working with them for a year. They were basically building the solution for about 3.5 years. It took us around half a year to 9 months to get the infrastructure as a code in place. All of the environments were manually created. I would say the team's half of our effort, we had a 3-people team, went into just basically putting out fire. Because there was always like, oh, somebody forgot to put that feature in, somebody forgot to put that flag in. So most of the time went into putting out fires instead of doing any kind of new development. So that's basically like why we want to start doing this. It's starting to really, really become costly. The other thing is, this is like where it gets very interesting and more like in a cloud way. Before it was very hard to test in production. Because if you wanted a like production-like environment, it was normally not possible. Let's just say that we are doing on-prem, there is normally very expensive load balancer with expensive certs. And if I say I want to have a second instance of that, there's just going to say, no, we are not going to give you a second instance that is like production. But when we're talking about Azure, it's normally like, yeah, we can spawn you 20 instances if you want, as long as you can do them very cheap. And that's why like having it as an infrastructure code will make it very cheap to spawn as many environments as you want for testing purposes. Then another thing is that you can finally start having multiple test environments. Anybody ever had a scenario where you want an environment, somebody else is using it for testing, and they're like, yeah, just wait a moment. I will fix this something, and then you can start using the environment. Ever had that scenario? I have that kind of constantly, that somebody's saying like, hey, you're currently running a long-running test in that environment, you cannot use that. Or we have, let's say, physical devices in certain environments, but not in others. And they're like, hey, we are doing something there. We cannot help you. So whole idea, once we are very far in this, we can very easily have lots of environment. Of course, if we have real physical devices, it gets harder, because then we need to have also multiple versions or multiple times those physical devices. Then the whole idea is about team. It's very hard for me to, for example, create an Azure environment to tell you what did I exactly do. If I now create a new Azure environment in a portal, it takes me probably like 20 minutes. And then if you ask me, so what did you do? Another like, I can probably answer most of the questions, what did I do? But if you ask me, what did you exactly do? Did you configure that thing or not? Did you press those things or not? I'm like, maybe. So it's also very hard to share the knowledge and share what did I do to fix things if I'm not doing infrastructure as code. So that's more about the reasoning of like why. And I think most of the people are already convinced that it's a good idea. Most companies are convinced that it's a good practice. But still, anybody have a customer who doesn't do IAC? I think we all do have few customers who are still not doing it. Normally the problem being is that it's too expensive. It's too expensive to initially basically create the infrastructure code and then maintaining it. You basically need people who are specialized on the platform to be able to maintain it, develop it. Finally, or like great lately, there has been a lot more tooling to do it. So currently tooling on Azure, which I've been seeing, is ARM, Bicep, Terraform, Ansible, Jeff, and Pulumi. Ansible and Jeff are not that common. Hopefully you're not seeing them that often. I would say these days it's more about either ARM or Bicep if you're doing native Azure, and then Terraform. Anybody using Pulumi? So Pulumi for some reason is not very popular in Finland. I don't know why, but I haven't seen that many cases in Pulumi in Finland. But in the UK, for example, they have way more Pulumi. It's the same thing, like there's almost no Xamarin project in Finland. If you go to UK and you look mobile project, there's lots of Xamarin. Again, no idea why exactly that technology stack. These days, Finland is all about basically, I would say, ARM, Bicep, and Terraform. That's basically most of the stacks. Interesting thing, and this is I think very important to know, is that whatever tool you're using, being it Azure Portal, PowerShell, CLI, Pulumi, Terraform, Bicep, ARM templates, they all, in the end, call Azure Resource Manager. And ARM template basically stands for Azure Resource Manager template. So whatever tool you're doing, that's where it basically all comes together. So if you can do it with Terraform, you can do the exactly same thing with ARM template. Is it as easy? Probably not. But it is, they're all calling it in the end. If something is really hard doing on infrastructure code, let's for example say subnets in a virtual network. It's not because the tooling is horrible, it's because the resource provider that is basically provided by Azure Resource Manager is horrible. That's the reason why writing subnets in infrastructure code is hard. It's just because those people, when they implemented it, which is around 6 years, 7 years ago already, they were not thinking that people would be using this much tooling on it. So they do the shortcuts, and we are still paying the price today. Then ARM versus Bicep. How many here are using ARM templates? Few. Bicep? Okay, awesome. Today, I would say that there is no reason to write ARM templates unless you have a really large project. And what I mean with large project is that there is this Azure landing zone. If you have, for example, invested a years building a complete Azure landing zone template. Would I transfer that from ARM to Bicep just for the sake of getting a Bicep? Probably not. If I have a fully working SaaS application, we have ready-made templates, we have spent ages building those, they're working perfectly, would I change it just to get Bicep? Probably not. If we are actively adding new features, doing changes on those templates, would I change it from ARM to Bicep? Yes. So if you're not touching it, I would not change it. If you're touching it often, I would absolutely go and invest on it to basically transfer it from ARM to Bicep. Then Pulumi, Ansible, and Chef. So these are more common if you already have invested on this, especially Ansible and Chef. So these are more toolings if the people have been using these to manage their virtual machines. So if you have invested heavily on your virtual machine automation and writing with these tools, then you have basically used them to provision Azure. And these are normally not used for, well, except Pulumi, basically Ansible and Chef are mostly used to provision networks and virtual machines. So you're not provisioning your PaaS environment, but it's more like certain kind of virtual machine environments. Especially like gaming companies have been very heavily leveraging these before. I would say these days they're moving towards Kubernetes, so they're not doing virtual machines anymore. But before they were doing virtual machines, they were using Ansible and Chef a lot more. Again, if you're starting from scratch, if you don't have any prior knowledge of your team, I don't see any reasons to use this. Pulumi lately, Pulumi has been more like C# based, so you're writing everything in C#. They lately also released YAML based convention, but I don't really see any reasons to stick with Pulumi or starting with Pulumi unless you have like extensive knowledge on how to do it. Then I think any tool is fine if you know how to use it. Then Terraform and Bicep. I think this is very often asked that, hey, our company is thinking about using Terraform, or we are thinking about, are we using Terraform, or are we using Bicep? The interesting thing is that if you're comparing them feature-wise, they start to be very close to each other. So for example, can you use it on multiple platforms? Bicep, no. Terraform, yes. You can write one Terraform template and then basically use it for multiple clouds. That's the story. Reality is a little bit far away from that, but that's still a good story. Then, are they storing data? Bicep, no, which I think is a cute thing. Terraform again, yes, which some people think is the best thing ever. So again, it depends on your opinions there. Then supporting modern developer environments, for example, Visual Studio Code. Both of them have a really good support in Visual Studio Code. I think the writing experience on Visual Studio Code, I think both of them are very similar. I don't think that either of them is better than the other. Then Microsoft support. This is very, I would say, interesting thing, at least in Finland. I don't think most people are like, hey, Microsoft is officially supporting this, that's a great thing. How many here think that Microsoft support for something is very important? The interesting thing is that if you're starting to go more for business people or people who are making the decision at the very top of the company, if you go and ask them that do you want something that Microsoft is supporting for a long term, or do you want something that it's not supported, they tend to be that, hey, we like that this thing has a very long lifetime and a very long support. Here again, Bicep is supported for the next 3 years. So even if Microsoft would today decide, hey, Bicep was a bad idea, we are not going to do it again, we're not going to add any features. They basically promise that they will keep updating all the security updates and everything for the next 3 years. And that's the important, depending on what you do. Then basically, CI/CD, both supported, both have a strong community. Bicep is a little bit younger, so there is not that many samples out there yet, but more and more are basically coming. So, multi-cloud. The whole idea about basically Terraform is that it's a multi-cloud. There is nothing wrong or hard basically writing basically single service. So if you're creating a single virtual network, you're creating a single virtual machine. That's not hard in either of these languages. But when it comes to hard part, it's basically that when you're chaining this, let's just say you're creating storage accounts, you're creating app services, custom domains, key vaults, certificates, networks, application insights, alerts, log analytics workspaces, something else. It starts to be getting very, very hard. And at this point, it's not really about the tooling. This is hard. Are you doing with Bicep or Terraform? It's hard. You need to understand how those services are basically bundling together, how they work together. It's not about do you know Terraform or do you know Bicep. It's very specifically, do you understand how these services are working together? I do understand Azure pretty well. I could probably write, I've never written Terraform a lot, but I could probably write it with Terraform. But if somebody's testing, like, let's just say the Bicep would work in Amazon, and somebody's like, yeah, you can just use this to create something on Amazon, I would be like, oh, so I want Lambda, I want S3, then I don't know how those are talking to each other, how is the identity handled, how do you add permissions? Like, it starts to be very, very cloud specific. And this is why I think it's very interesting when somebody's saying, hey, you just take Terraform, you can write to another cloud. Okay? The syntax is the same, but the knowledge that you need to write those templates is completely different. And that's why I think it's very important to also understand that. Then, development. And this is where I think it's starting to get like really interesting. It's the development cycles of the IAC. So mostly, whenever you hear that writing infrastructure code is expensive or hard, is that they are skipping certain cycles. So the very first cycle, which I think is very important, is exploring. If you have no idea what kind of infrastructure you want to build, you're not able to write it in an infrastructure code. You need to first have an idea, what are we building, how are these pieces going to fit together, how are we going to configure them together. So you need to have this kind of exploration environment, exploration and like a phase in your development cycle. Whenever you're adding a new service, I think nobody starts by going to infrastructure code and saying, hey, I want this new service, I know exactly how it fits in our environment. You normally go to Azure portal, you click things, you can see it working, and then you basically test it, and once it's working, then you start turning it into infrastructure as code. And some companies have been very heavy on governance, basically saying that, hey, we have this governance strategy. You're not able to provision anything into Azure without going to DevOps or without going to the specific environments which don't have the other pieces that you need to test things. So that's why I think it's very important that you have a place where you can do exploration within the context of your infrastructure so that you can repeat everything and you can still do it manually. Then we have the initial infrastructure code. And this is basically where most of the investment goes. It's basically writing the first version of your infrastructure, basically. And this is where you're basically taking all of the nice handcrafted environment and turning it into infrastructure code. If you have one environment, very nice and easy. If you have 7 environments or more, very hard. Especially if it comes to this discussion that, hey, I can see that these environments are kind of similar, but they have differences. And then this one environment is completely different from the others. Why are they different? And then somebody says like, how are they different? I don't think they're different. That's where it becomes very, very problematic. So it's very important that the exploration phase is still focused on a single environment. You don't explore options with 6 environments or 3 environments or anything. You have a single environment where you're testing things out, and then you start to go with IAC. Another thing to notice is that this initial phase is normally very time consuming because you're trying out things, you're trying like does the IAC really work like this, and you normally face lots of errors in this phase. Anybody ever have problems running their templates? Yeah. I have lots of these comments which are like, yeah, should work now, next comment 5 seconds later, no, next comment, no. And then we get really bored, it's like to be ASD, 100 comments later, it's working. Amazing. So the initial IAC is very normally time consuming. And then we have the last phase, which is basically editing, then basically improving it. And this is where you just are basically, if you have everything in place, you're making small changes very quick, very easy. Hopefully. So, another thing to know is normally it's very normal to say you have 3 environments: dev, QA, and production. You might have less, you might have more. Hopefully, you have at least 3. If you have these 3 environments, very important thing is that I would make dev environments so that you can deploy the infrastructure code from your own machine. This is very important for the cycle of the usual IAC. If I can start the deployment from my own computer to do a deployment, it's going to be way quicker than I need to make a comment. If I need to make a comment for everything that I'm trying, it's going to at least take, I would say, 20 times more for every cycle to basically finalize. And basically, I will not be very happy developer. But yeah, every other environment should be CI/CD, so they should not be deployable straight from somebody's computer. And this is basically very important to basically get the dev environment. It's not 100% mandatory, but I've seen that it increases the developer happiness a lot if you can deploy it yourself. Then, very quickly, folder structure. There's not that many people talking about the folder structure. This is the way that I personally put all of my IAC templates. So we have a folder, there's a folder called IAC, which contains all of the modules. Why are you splitting things in modules? Is that you can make them small enough that if you want to make changes to, let's say, virtual machines, you go to a file which says virtual machine. You're not going to one file that has 2,000 lines. You're going to a single file that has 200 lines that are very specific to virtual machines. Then it has another file which is called virtual networks and all of those. Why modules are important? They will make them easy to understand. And the best thing ever, you can start versioning them. Anybody versioning over their infrastructure template files? Are they easy, hard versioning? I would say currently it's getting better. I think the tooling is not yet there, but I hope that it's improving, or it is improving all the time. I hope that the future will be easier to start really versioning them. And to version, you version the modules basically. That's why it's very important to split it. Then personally, I have a parameters file. I always have a file that basically has different environments. So if we have 3 environments, I have a file called dev, QA, and product, which has the parameters that is provisioned in it. If you're wanting to change something, let's say, you want larger computers, larger SQL, whatever, basically you put the parameters file, replace the parameter, and everything's good. This way also, like, everybody can see how the environment should be provisioned based on the parameter file. Then you have a pipeline, which has your Azure DevOps or GitHub YAML pipelines. I hope everybody's already using YAML pipelines. I think that's the way to go. And then you have the Azure Resources bicep, which is this is the one main bicep that basically is then referencing all the modules. If you do it this way, it will be way faster to deploy, and it will enable a very nice strategy for the local development. But before we talk about, so how is the pipeline looking? I normally do these 4 steps in the pipeline. First, get all the source code, then run your PowerShell that generates passwords, if you need to do it, probably not, but if you have to. Then we do, then I use something called replace tokens. In Azure DevOps, a very specific task that basically replaces all the strange stuff, basically normally from keyboard, like basically takes secrets from a keyboard, puts them in the file. And then basically do a deployment. And the deployments are always either management group, subscription, or resource group level. I personally prefer subscription level. So if you've ever done a PowerShell or Azure CLI scripting to create resource groups, I recommend you stop doing that and you start creating them in a bicep. Why? If you're adding one CLI test that creates, let's say, 2 resource groups that normally they run 1 minute and 30 seconds in an Azure DevOps build agent, I don't know why they're so slow, but if you're doing that in a bicep, it takes around 3 seconds. So every time your CI is running, you're basically cutting almost 2 minutes. So small change, a huge effect. Another good thing is that if you're using this model, So basically, not having lots of PowerShell, not having strange stuff there. You're basically making sure that everything is very easy to deploy from local machine. You have the parameter file, you have one single file that's deployment, you can say async deploy, and then you just basically say one file, one parameter file, it brings us all in environment. So the whole idea, like why not put lots of PowerShell, why not do custom stuff, you make the local development as easy as possible. Because even though normally people have permissions to deploy to data environment, if my deployment basically takes 20 steps, like replace that, generate that, run this PowerShell, run that PowerShell, run this Azure CLI, use that service principal, it starts to be so long that I prefer to have my DevOps pipeline doing it or my automation because the manual steps are so massive. That's why if you have a pipeline for Bicep, they should be as short as possible and contain as few things as possible. Let's say that if my PowerShell is generating passwords, I can once go to the website, generate passwords, then copy paste them, and give my parameter file very quick and easy. Then new features of Bicep. And this is always like very interesting. Like, what is this new? These have been basically released within the past 2 months. So there is three things: public registries. So if you were using ARM templates before, Microsoft has like a huge, massive amount of different kind of ARM templates. Everybody's saying, hey, use this to create your machine, use this to create Red Hat stuff, use this for this. And most of the quality of those templates is very low. I would say that they were very horrible. So now they are trying this again, and the new try is that every module that is basically published here will be maintained by Microsoft forever. And that's why currently there's 4 modules. So they are not going to add so many modules because they are basically promising to maintain those forever, and they are basically saying we are responsible for the quality of those modules. So that's why you're going to see very limited amount of modules there. Then private registry. So the same way as you're currently pushing your containers, you can basically take your Bicep modules, put them in Azure private registry, and push them there, converse them, and then share them with your customers. It can also be a public registry. So if you have a public container registry, you can start pushing your Bicep modules there and then tell everybody, hey, these are my nice modules, feel free to use them. And then the last one is basically Bicep insert resource. So when you're generating Bicep, at least I prefer before doing it manually, like starting from scratch, creating with documentation. Now there is this new feature in ES Code where you say insert resource. What is my existing resource? You pick it from a list. This is basically the pop-up in the resources code. You pick your resource and it generates Bicep for you automatically. This is like a quality of life improvement that will make you a lot faster. These are, I would say, the best new features. Then, few things that are on the roadmap, which is going to make your life a lot better, is Azure AD support. So if you can write a step that creates some Azure AD users, adds people to Azure AD groups or that kind of things, straight from Bicep. That's basically the next thing coming. Another thing which is coming is also being able to do Kubernetes commands. So after basically provision your Kubernetes cluster, you can say, I want to do LD deployment. And after that is done, I want to deploy an event hub, and then I do the next LD deployment, and then deploy the next resource to the next deployment. So they're adding more and more these kind of features into the Bicep. And the whole idea is to basically get it better all the time. Questions? Everybody's going to switch to Bicep now. Everybody thinks that this is the master technique. Yeah.
If I don't wrong, Bicep is like, it's leveraging ARM behind the scene, right?
Well, everything is leveraging ARM, yeah.
But then the learning curve for Bicep, because at least when I was like learning about infrastructure as a code, I never heard about it. It was only ARM templates with which I interacted and Terraform. So if I'm familiar with ARM, how hard in general is to switch to Bicep?
That's a very good question. So how hard is it to switch to Bicep from ARM? I would say that if you're familiar with ARM, probably like 3 days. It's very quick, and after you have basically used it for a week, you don't have to ever write ARM again. The tooling is like a night and day. Like the number one reason why Bicep is so much better is tooling. Because if you have ever written ARM template that had a small mistakes, small typos, strange stuff, and then you're basically compiling it, or deploying it, basically everything else. All of those are now cached by the tooling. That's the number one reason why you want to switch over to Bicep tooling. And then, like basically what Mike is saying, that they could not provide that tooling in ARM. That's why basically the whole Bicep system. So 3 days.
And then the question regarding the creating those Bicep templates when you use like drag and drop services.
Yep.
Is it the same as when you're like able to export, or is it that you have an interface and I can select specific the services, specify like how they are connected, and then it generates the Bicep template?
Yeah, so the Bicep template generation of the in-service resource is basically you look at the drop down and you're selecting single resource. So it's a little bit different than the whole exported template. But they're trying to improve it so that in the future you take your whole deployment and say insert all of this, but currently it's a single resource. And the quality of the generated stuff should be better. This far I can be pretty happy, but this depends very heavily on what you're doing. If anybody has ever done Azure API management, infrastructure code, that will never ever be a nice experience. It will be always a horrible experience. And that's just because how Azure API management has been built, sadly. They're hopefully trying to fix it now. They're doing lots of things about providing a new resource provider, splitting Azure API management into parts and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully within the next 2 years, it will be better. They had a very good talk on the field about that if you're interested.
So any users of API management, user like developer portal, deployment or something.
Yeah, so they announced lots of things about that. They're trying to improve it, but none of this is in a public preview yet, so there isn't quite many private previews, especially about this kind of scenario where you have lots of teams publishing APIs to Azure API management, and they're basically colliding. Because the whole idea about is an Azure API management is you need to have the whole API management at one file, basically. So they have now started to split it. And the developer portal itself, I would say that it's okay. And I don't see that there's going to be huge improvements in there. It's pretty new also. The whole Azure API management developer portal is, I think, 1 year old. I would not expect it to be renewed anytime soon. I actually personally think that's pretty okay, especially to silent. Like we had I would say, designer team working on 3 days. We have a very nice looking Azure API management. If I would do it, it probably would take a month. It would still look horrible. So just take a designer team and make it look pretty if you want to improve the design with it. Feature-wise, I think it's pretty okay. Anything else? Cool. So all the whole slide deck is available there. There's also a QR code. So if you want slides, they are there. I will keep this for a while. At least if you're a student, I have not tested the course. Why do you test stuff if you're going to test it? Nice. Cool. So, thank you for listening. We will now take a short 30 minutes break, go get some food, eat, then we'll come back here. And then either on the all or we'll start next. We will look a little bit about who will be the next, but probably all day. So then we can. Yes. Anyway, thank you for listening and food.
Thanks.
I'm talking about an IT Pro in compared to developers. You all know what IT Pro and developers are different. Well, developers is code, and IT Pros are the ones who don't code. Basically everybody who worked with servers and everything before. So my talk is about how to do all the cool cloud stuff I put the level here, it's 100-ish. So if you all know the Microsoft levels, 100, 200, 300, 400, so 100 is really low. So setting expectations here, not much like going higher. But who of you here identifies IT pros? Who like done some more server stuff, or do you all code? Or did you start coding? So that's good. Okay, no problem. So me, I work as a cloud and data business area lead in Meltlake, and I do as an Azure advisor. I worked in IT for around 20 years, a bit over 20 years, and for the past almost a decade, I've been working with cloud. So the idea is, there's nothing cool for IT pros in the cloud. All the developers, DevOps is for developers, they do all the cool stuff, all the native stuff. The IT pros can stick with their virtual machines and networks. That's right, right? I do probably agree with you. Well, let's start with what is DevOps. And DevOps, obviously, if you ask 10 people what DevOps means, you can get 10 answers. But to program Microsoft itself, dev, development, operations, DevOps is the union of people, process, technology to provide value to customers. And if you read that, it's basically everything for everything. So, IT pros can be cool cloud people also. All you have to do is learn a few skills and tools. And tying into what we had earlier on, basically it's all about infrastructure as code. So we have that already. You already know what you have to do infrastructure as code. It's, again, repeating, it's creation and configuration of infrastructure with code. And note here is that everything in the cloud is mentioned in infrastructure, not just services and networking, but anything you do in the cloud is infrastructure. That means storage, SQL, whatever you do. And I did not know what Teemu was going to talk, so this first part is exactly the same. So the ideology, we already went through that. A really cool word, idempotency. And there's no actual translation to Finnish. It's exactly the same in Finnish also. What it means is that you always get the same result when you redeploy it. So you do it now, you'll get that result. You do it tomorrow, same result. So you reduce the errors, you create repeatability, and you create speed, like we already have. And what languages, well, we'll talk about are declarative. So you write what the end result has to be, and that's different from writing code. You write code to do what you want to do, but we write the end result. So that means also that you don't have to write the code in order and get it in place. And again, why we do this, we talked about cost and time savings, you minimize your human errors, making more secure environments, and use standard development and production. But for the IT pros, out of the game with the infrastructure as code, how do I do this? So this session is a bit of tips and tricks to how to develop your skills. And I don't know, I mean, some of the developers even might get something out of this, because I don't know if you have your own environments. Good starting place, as all Azure subscriptions have a trust relationship with Azure AD. So start up with an Azure AD, sign up for one. An easy way to do that is the free subscription. There's for 12 months you get tons of subscriptions for free, and tons of subscriptions for free for lifetime of that subscription, or any subscription in fact. So like static web apps, if you want to start a blog, that's free for always, the free tier. And that's how you get started on the environment. There's other ways to handle the tenant. It's actually, I don't know if you know new, especially if you do want to test something that has to do with licensing. The Microsoft 365 development program you get free MS365 E5 subscriptions with that. So you get all of the Azure AD premium P2 features, for example. So privilege identity management, all of that, if you want to do security checks on how to manage access, for example, it's easy to do that. And then you can join your subscription into that. And especially if you have a Visual Studio Enterprise license, the one we usually talk about, MSDN, the old one. If you have that, for example, for work, you can, instead of using that in your work environment, where probably the Azure AD, again, is very tied up and has all the security controls of your company, have your own. So that's how you get to do all of the testing. For example, managed identities you should probably use nowadays, but service principal. You probably have your ID saying you can't have service principal in your company Azure AD if you want to test something just because of compliance and security and so forth. So very easy to get licensing, and you can even do your custom domain. So you can choose the domain name, add your own domain, and then add the license, the subscription to that one. And licenses renew every 90 days. So it is actually, in fact, a very good way to do that. And talking about free, we do DevOps. So as a DevOps, I don't know, everybody probably knew, but it's also free. If you go with the basic plan, it's up to 5 users. I mean, all of your multiple personalities can have their own license in your Azure AD. Has this about the pipelines have enough job minutes to do all the cool stuff you want to test out in the environment. Additional tips which I sometimes use in my workflow. GitHub, similar, is free like as a DevOps, so you can get the GitHub account, there's GitHub actions, I think 2,000 minutes is free, so forth, and you can deploy from there. And some of the services now even in Azure use GitHub actions quite easy, so the static web apps, which I mentioned, is integrated directly, so if you sign up with your GitHub account, it just looks up your repo and goes from there. If you use Windows, and why wouldn't you? Except you've got a Mac. So if you use Windows, the Windows subsystem for Linux, if you do open source development, for example, is very good. So you can add, for example, when I want to try Python environments, I just spin it up or install VSL, tested whatever I wanted, and I scrap that VSL, and I can redo that again every time I want to test something, so it doesn't mess up my Windows system if I want to add like Python environments. Visual Code Studio Code, I already mentioned that also. There's plenty of ideas. You can go with whatever you want, add so on, so forth. But obviously, it's free. It's from Microsoft. Why not use it? And the extensions are really good. Like if you use Windows Subsystems for Linux, you can have a remote VSL. So the Visual Studio Code on your Windows machine will connect to that Visual Studio, so you can edit your code straight on a graphical interface, because why would we go to a terminal and then want to create a graphical? It's easier. PowerShell, Azure, and so forth. I'm really surprised, I've asked this a lot. How many of you have heard of shell.azure.com before? About half, so half. So if you go there, it's just a container. It's a pre-built container by Microsoft that has all of the tools in it. And it's so much easier to utilize that if you want to do something quickly. Just go to that address, sign in with your account, and you have all of the tools needed there, and it's already signed into your context of Azure identity. So you can select your subscription there and just start working there straight away. And it supports both CLI, Azure CLI, and AWS PowerShell, either one. So you're covered either way. And people think they don't need to learn a lot, but Microsoft Learn is big. Nowadays, when it came out, it was okay, but nowadays it's very big. They have everything in there. Basically, anything you want to learn from Microsoft, there's some information there. And most of the Azure stuff also have sandbox subscriptions available, streaming browsers, so you can follow the instructions and study that. So that's also a good way to do stuff. And at some point, Microsoft Docs weren't that good. They're not half bad today. They're really good. So just if you want to learn stuff, just go through the documentation. I mean, they're mostly updated. If they just release something, they might not be, but most of the time they're good. So after all of that, you got your laptop and environment and everything is set up. So what do you do now? Now we insert everything they all said. So infrastructure is code. So you need to code. Yeah, bit of code learning is involved. You have to learn. Luckily, I'm covered here. I don't have to explain any of this. You already know why you do this. And as I said, they're not that bad to learn. They're declarative, so you state what you do, and what exactly you work with Azure. So prefer Bicep. Do work with Bicep. It's much more easier, and maybe if we need to and want to Terraform. And yeah, one of the things where they will say like, well, we do multi-cloud. Well, the Terraform solutioner for AWS is totally different. The syntax is totally different. So you cannot take the code for an Azure environment and expect it to work in an AWS environment. It just doesn't work. It's totally different. So you do have to write it all differently. I mean, maybe the benefit is that then you can, in one pipeline, you can call first code, I don't know, what would you do? The Visual Studio Code, again, what was already said, the extension is really good. The Bicep, it almost writes itself. So you just select that you want this to create this resource. It sets it up all for you, so it's so much more easy to learn. Okay. The next thing, and again, this is for the IT pros, not everybody knows this. All of the developers know the code has to go somewhere. So get with Git, it's the de facto distributed version control system. And again, might have been that we've worked before enough, but yeah. So how you're going to know what's going on if you don't have the code stored in a secure place that you can read. So if you go and click in the portal, you might forget something, or whatever you've done like the day before, or I don't know, I don't remember what I did this morning. So having the code secure in some place is how to make the code work for your time. So you master Git to handle code on your machine, and you store it in repos in Azure DevOps. And Git it's open source, so it lives and works everywhere. As I said, you can install it in Windows, the Windows subsystem for Linux, obviously in Linux, Macs, and as I said, it's already installed in the Azure shell. You don't have to install that there, so you can quite easily connect to, let's say, GitHub in your Azure context and quickly deploy something into your environment. Then, talking of going somewhere, pipes. It's your pipes. Pipelines. So obviously, the next thing is to learn how to deploy that code. And with that again, we really should make this thing tough what we're going to talk about. But once you have your code in Azure repository, you can pipe it into Azure. And Azure DevOps, as I said, it's free. There's no point in not learning this stuff. It's really easy. The pipelines in YAML are cool. They're one of the ways, and all of the new features are there. But I think the tip is to try classical editor. The graphical way is really easy to do it. I mean, you don't really have to learn or look at the documentation. It's very self-explanatory. And the bonus tip is if you really perverted and strange, you might want to look at Jenkins, the open source, because that is, if you are living in the open source world, that's something that's used quite a lot. Several CIs coming up also. Jenkins is, but Azure DevOps should be enough for quite a while. So cool. You got this. What can you use this for? Everything. Well, basically everything. Just about everything can be created, modified, and done with code in Azure. There are things that might not be good to do or easy to do. I mean, managing groups is one of the things that you could try and do that, and we'll talk about that later on if you want to do. But if you do anything basic, web apps, anything to do with application services, storage, SQL, well, virtual service, everything is so easy to create with code. And well, when I mean everything, you can automate everything. Deploy data services, SQL, storage, all of that flies into the environment. Also, networking services, so gateways, firewalls. Are you doing security? Fine. Deploy a Microsoft Sentinel and the logging from that with code. Web application firewall to secure all of your cool applications. Management, monitoring log analytics. And obviously, compute, AKS, the Kubernetes service you can deploy, app services, other ones. And yes, you can deploy virtual machines with that if you really want to. And if you go far enough, as I said, you can have Ansible and share from publicly and disaster configuration added into that. So once you have your virtual machines, you can install stuff in your virtual machine. So all of that is code. So you don't have to have the configuration with all of your environments if they're test or development or production, you must say. Yeah, and especially if you do management. I mean, how many of you work for an outsourced IT company and you do some management for customers? I know at least a couple of places on this side, you know that. So, I mean, making ops easy is with the cloud native tools. If you provision the cloud way, why don't you also manage that with the cloud way? So, do everything. Like, okay, managing groups, you can do with code, maybe not do that, you don't have to modify them that much. But policies, all the policies, why don't we just deploy that with code? And then you can deploy that same code to another customer, so you know all of your customers are for example exactly the same way. Automation of update management. Do that with code. No reason to go and click on the virtual machine to do that. Save it as a backup. Set up all of the roles for the backup with that and go from there. Or as a monitor. And even after the services needs tend a lot of care. So you can also manage all of the management for the customer services. So you have application services, you have API management, all of that monitoring for those. You can also do with code, obviously, because you already set up the environments with code. As I said, this is a story or a journey of a person going with the IT background of level 100, going into the cloud. What else to do? Well, I mean, if you've done that already, what I had there before, you're already there. You know what to do. But then, what you want to do when you grow up, compliance and security at the moment is very big. And if anybody who does that, all of that's growing. Python, if you really want to get into coding, it's easy. Works everywhere. A lot of data manipulation is done with Python, Databricks and stuff like that, if you want to go that way. And containers. Learning containers is easy, well, easy. It can be cool. You can do a lot with them. not even before you start coding on top of the containers. There's a lot of management you could do and learn as an IT pro. Yeah. So this is the road to IT, to DevOps for an IT pro. Just automate everything. It's the future for IT pros. Everybody has to do it. It's not just for developers. And remember, friends don't let friends push you anything forward.
Try thinking with personal first and then
Yeah, that's dev environment. Dev environment is
it doesn't say production anything from work.
Yeah. I'm trying to provoke here. But he wasn't exactly also saying that you have to do it from the portal, you can do it from your own laptop.
Yeah.
So the different dev code can be on live on your laptop. And all of these tools are exactly that. These are the tools to have on your machine to go into the cloud. Cool. Question. Any questions? My question is, was this self-explanatory to everybody before this?
Yes.
Was it not? Was there somebody who thought like, oh shit, I'll be doing work all the time? Cool. The second, you might have had to think before this. Okay. So no questions. Hello. Thank you.
Thank you.
Teemu, why don't you go up there and Rob as well? So let's take a picture.
Yeah.
Three of you guys on the stage. Do you want to switch back to that slide for this one? That's a good one on the back one. It looks good.
That's what one perfect.